Hello, good afternoon, evening, good morning, maybe for some of you, depending where you are. Welcome, everyone. I'll wait a few more seconds while everyone settles in. Um, we have several audiences here. Some of you are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you know who you are. And many others are following on some streaming platform. We're streaming this live on several platforms. So wherever you are, on whatever platform you are, welcome. Um, I am Stephen. Yeah, I can see some comments coming in already. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. So I'm Stephen. I'll be with you for the next 45 minutes or so, depending on how many questions you have, really. And I'll be taking you through the format and the content of the intermediate deep dive course, the Real Python deep dive course. So we'll talk a bit about what you can expect from the course, what it's like, and at the end, I hope you can answer the question at the end of this session. Is this the sort of course you're looking for? It may not be the right thing for you at this time, but if it is, hopefully we'll figure it out by the end of this 45 minutes, hour session. Good. Everyone has settled in there. So let's make a start. I'll be talking about an intermediate course. So this is not a beginner's course. If you're a beginner in Python, we do have a beginner's course as well, but in this session, I'll be talking about an intermediate course. I'll define what I mean by intermediate, and I'll be showing you the content, because intermediate can mean lots of different things for different people. So stay. I'll be guiding you into what's in this course, and hopefully I'll be able to help you figure out whether this is the right course for you. Um, There are quite a few of you on several platforms, so a lot of the session is going to be me talking to you, which is not how our actual sessions in the courses run. However, please do ask questions at any point. I'll have plenty of time for questions throughout the session and at the end, but don't wait till the end. Those of you on Zoom can post questions on Zoom at any point you want. If you want, you can even raise your hand and speak up. It's up to you. Those of you on other platforms, you should be able to post your question on whatever platform you're on. Some of those platforms do not send the messages to me, but if they do, I'll see them. If not, I'll let you know how you can ask me and get in touch with me later on. So please do ask questions at any point. From time to time, you'll see me look to my left. That's where I've got my second screen with all the chats there. So I'll keep an eye there, and from time to time, I'll sort of pause and answer your questions. Okay, now, you're here to find out about the intermediate Python course, not about me. So I'll keep my intro really brief. But I do want to tell you a few words about who I am. Why? Because this is a live course. I will be the one teaching it. I'm also the one who's designed this course. So hopefully I'm in a good place to answer all of your questions. But those of you who will join the course, you will be together for the length of the course. So let me tell you very briefly who I am. You know my name, I'm Stephen. I'm a physicist by training. So my first profession, I was a physicist, and that's where I've learned my coding. So I came to programming via the science route. I needed coding for all my science work, etc., etc. And then about sort of 10, 11 years ago, whenever it was, I've lost count now, I've sort of moved away from academic science and I focused on Python, on teaching Python, communicating about Python. I've taught Python at all levels, beginners to intermediate to more advanced, to all ages, from 7-year-olds to all the way up to whatever. I don't know what ages. Um, so, so I've been in the Python world, teaching Python, writing about Python, creating stuff with Python for a long time. I joined Real Python at the end of 2024, so a year and a half ago, with the aim of setting up and running these live courses. So for those of you who are new to Real Python, many of you probably know about Real Python. In fact, if you go and Google any Python thing, you're very likely to find the Real Python article as one of the first posts. So if you're familiar with Real Python, then you're probably familiar with the written articles, maybe the video courses. But as of last year, we've also been running these live cohort-based courses. So something a bit different. And the idea is to have different type of content depending on what you're looking for. So we've been running these courses. We've run quite a few of them last year at different levels. So the format I'll be talking about today is tried and tested. We've fine-tuned it. It's sort of, we feel it works very well. And I'll be taking you through it in a bit. So The main idea behind this course is to make it flexible yet thorough. We're trying to get the best of both worlds. What do I mean by this? We want it to be flexible in the sense that we designed this course so that you can fit it with your existing commitments. This is not the sort of course where you have to give up everything for a number of weeks and do nothing else other than this course. So we've designed this course so that it fits within your other activities. And I'll tell you more about what the commitment you're going to expect to put into the course is so you can see whether that's the right thing for you. Um, However, this is not a self-study course. There's me, the instructor. I'll be there throughout the course, guiding you step by step. And the idea is that often the problem with self-learning is that you have a question and then you need someone to discuss that question, to ask that question. And that's where my role comes in. I'll be there to guide you throughout the course, and therefore you can ask me questions, we can have discussions. I some people find it also useful to have that accountability level. You're not learning alone. You're going through a course with an instructor, with other students, day by day, going through the material. So that helps you keep accountable, to keep the learning going on and motivated. So that's the general principle behind what we wanted to do with designing this course. Good. I want to do two things today, and I will go fairly quickly, and then I'll expand depending on how many questions you have. I can see some questions are coming in there already. I'll start going through some of the material, and then I'll make sure that any questions you've put there, I'll answer them as well. Two things today. First, I'll talk about the format of the course. That's important because at the end of the day, the format needs to be something that works for you and that you can fit within your schedule. Then I'll talk about the content because that is also relevant. This is not a beginner's course, so is this the right level for what you want next? Okay, so let me start with, we have started now, we're not starting soon, so let's move on. Let me move on to write some notes. I don't tend to use PowerPoint slides, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually write notes as I go along. I'll go through the key points in terms of what you need to know about the format of this course. I'll go through them quickly, and then I'll go through all of them and expand a bit on why we've chosen that, so that by the end of the section, you have a really good idea of what the format of the course is. We'll talk about the content later. Good. First things first, how long is the course? It's an 8-week course. I'll tell you why we've chosen 8 weeks and not shorter, not longer. So for now, I'll just go through all of the key points. Within each day of the course, there's roughly 2 hours commitment each weekday of the course. Again, in a few minutes, I'll tell you what you'd expect those 2 hours of commitment to be. They won't be the same every day. It will vary, but I did say that you can fit this with your existing work schedule, study schedule. But of course, if you think you won't have those 2 hours commitment each day, perhaps this is not the right course for you. There is still work to be done, as you can imagine, because we have plenty to cover. Now, I'll give you an idea of what the daily stuff you'll be doing will be, but a key part of the course is the live lessons. And we're going to have 3 live sessions per week. So every week, 3 live sessions. Again, I'll expand a bit more on what we'll be doing in these sessions in a few minutes. Size of the groups, there'll be 10 students per cohort. We want to keep these groups small, and I'll tell you why. You'll get to understand sort of the format of these courses, and you'll see why we need to have small groups so we can have those discussions, those conversations, etc. And as they say, last but not least, there's a forum, which I think is such an important part of this course. It's the glue that binds everything together. Okay, so let me go through these. I won't spend too long, but I want to sort of just expand a bit more on why each of these points are there and what you'd expect in the course. So the aim of this course is to cover quite a bit of material. So that's why it's not a 1-week course or a 2-week course. It's not a full-time course. You'll be doing it along with other things. So we wanted to make sure we cover a significant amount of material. However, we don't want sometimes you have those courses where it feels like there's a tick box. Let's cover this topic. Good. Move on, move on, move on, move on. We didn't want that. I don't believe in that. I think every topic we cover, we also need to have a bit of time to let it brew, if you like, to make sure we understand it, discuss it, work on examples. We don't want to be rushing through things. So 8 weeks is a good period of time to cover a significant amount of material and have enough time to go in detail, to dive deep. That's why it's called an intermediate deep dive into each topic. Shorter, you don't have time to do either of those two things. And the moment a course starts to get longer than 8 weeks, energy levels start to sap. So 8 weeks seems to work quite well to sort of get enough material, have enough time to discuss it, but then the course is not too long either. Now, as I've mentioned, we've run this course and other titles in the same format, and 8 weeks seems to work really well for that. So we're quite happy with the length of the course. Each day of the course, each weekday of the course. So the way the course works is I've curated material for each and every day of this 8 week course, so 40 days in all. So every day you'll have the material curated from the Real Python's existing material. So I've taken bits from written articles, bits from video courses, and every day I've created the curriculum for the day. So on most days of the course, I'll tell you why not to all, on most days, you'll have your material for the day, and you can go through that material at any part of the day that suits you. Whether it's early morning before you take the dog for a walk, or at lunchtime, or after dinner, whatever time it works for you, that's where the flexibility comes in. So you have the flexibility of going through the daily material in your own time. This will include, as I've mentioned, some reading, some watching videos. It won't always be the same every day. Some exercises you'll be working on. And in the rest of these points, I'll tell you how we're going to then bring everything together. Now, this is, however, not a purely self-study course. So even though you have the flexibility of going through the material throughout the day as it suits you, a key part of the course is the interaction between me and you, all of us. And part of that is the live meetings. We'll have 3 live meetings a week. 2 of these will be Q&A sessions. These are 2 60-minute sessions. These will be the Monday and the Friday live session. So every Monday, every Friday, we'll meet live. And as the name implies, this is where you bring the questions. So there's no set agenda. You bring the questions. Often I like to call these Q&A and the D. The D is for discussion, because it's not about you asking questions and me giving you answers. That's great, but really it's about you asking questions, and then we have a discussion around those questions. And that's where we really understand how all the pieces fit together. Of course, as part of that discussion, the answers will then come out naturally. So these live sessions, these Q&As, I think are really important, because it means that the topics you are going through, as we are every day as you're going through the material, you will have questions. I mentioned before, when you're self-learning, you probably have seen this before. Sometimes you have, did I really understand this well? Or I haven't quite understood this point. And how do you ask the questions? There are 2 ways you could do it. And one of them is the Q&As. So you bring the questions to the Q&As, and we'll have discussions around them. The 3rd session in the week is a 90-minute structured session, let's call it. Structured session. And this is going to be the Wednesday session. And this is effectively a structured lesson where I'll be covering either new material or picking some of the material that you've already covered and look at it from a different perspective or add more to it. We'll work on exercises. So this is effectively a structured lesson. That's the Wednesday lesson. So 3 times a week, we'll be meeting live on Zoom. Plenty of time to discuss as a group and explore these topics. Now, this is possible because we have small groups, and this is why we have 10 students per cohort. I'll show you later the different sessions we have. So there are 2 sessions running every time there is a live session. So you'll pick one of them. You'll pick a time that suits you. So in each of those sessions, there will be 10 students. That means we can have a smallish group to enable those discussions. The sessions will not be like this one. Here, I am the one talking to you, and yes, you can ask questions, and I'll come to your questions. A reminder, type your questions in, and I'll get to them in a few seconds. In the sessions in the course, I like to think of this as, even though we're all on Zoom in different parts of the world, let's imagine we're sitting around the table having a chat. And it's about having those conversations, having those discussions, making sure that you're comfortable asking a question and stopping me at any point. That can only happen with smallish groups. So that's why we've kept these groups relatively small. And as I've described it earlier, the forum is the glue that binds everything together. What do I mean by this? The forum is there throughout the whole 8 weeks. It's there 24/7. Well, I do sleep from time to time, so I won't be there 24/7, but I'll be there throughout my waking hours, making sure that we keep the conversations going. So I did say there are two ways you can ask your questions as you're going through the material. You can bring them to the Q&As, or you can post them on the forum at any time. In fact, you can do both. You can post them on the forum and bring them to the Q&As. So the forum is there for you to ask questions. We can keep the discussion going. If you're working on examples, which you will be working on lots of coding exercises, you can post them on the forum. We can discuss them and have discussions around them. So the forum is the ongoing conversation, that the conversation that never ends throughout the course. I think this is a really important part because it means that the conversation can keep going on at all times. You don't have to necessarily just wait for the Wednesday session or the Friday session. The questions can go straight away, and often you'll get answers very quickly. So we're not just waiting for the live sessions. We're also keeping the conversation going throughout the whole 8 weeks. Good. Now, I'll pause there. There are a few questions that have come in, so I'll have a look at them now. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the content. This was the format. It's important to make sure the format works for you. The 8 weeks works for you. The 2 hours commitment a day works for you. The style of learning works for you. But obviously the content also matters. So let me have a look. There are a few highs there. So hello. By the way, you can't all see all the messages because they're all coming in on different platforms, some on Zoom, some on YouTube, some on LinkedIn. So I'll read them out. I'll read out the questions. Coming out, actually, there are a few more sessions for. How long is each session? So I think that question came in before. I was mentioning this. So the live sessions, there are 3 of them a week. The Q&As are 1 hour each. The Wednesday session is 90 minutes. So those are the live sessions. So 3.5 hours a week. But then there's everything else that happens, which is not the live content. So the material you're going through in every day, roughly 2 hours a day, and the forum is ongoing. But in terms of the live sessions, that's 3.5 hours a week we'll be meeting. Ina asked me, will the sessions be recorded? Yes. Even though we would encourage you to attend live because you get most of this out of this course if you join into the conversation. But sometimes you're going to have a work meeting that comes in last minute and it's at the time of the session, or sometimes you have some other commitment. So yes, each of these sessions, each of the 3 sessions a week will be recorded. You'll have access to them soon after the session. So if you miss a session, or if there was a discussion in a session and you want to go back to the discussion and listen to it again, then the recording will be there for you to be able to catch up. Although we do recommend that if you do this course, ideally you have at least some availability to join some of the lessons live, because I think you get more out of the course that way. But yes, sessions will be recorded and made available to you. How do I know if the score is the right level for me? So 2 answers there. In a second, I'm going to show you the content of the scores. We'll go through it, and hopefully that will give you a sense of, yes, that's the level I'm at. However, and this is open to all of you there, if any of you want to look at their specific requirements further, after the session, if we can't answer it in the session, get in contact with me. Depending on where you are, you'll either get an email from me. If you're on Zoom, you'll get an email from me so you can reply to that. If you're watching this on any of the social media platforms, depending on where you are, you'll either find me personally, just contact me there, or you'll definitely be on the Real Python page. Just contact Real Python and say, can you put me in contact with Stephen because we had this session and he promised that he'll talk to me and find out more. So one way or another, get to me and I'm happy to discuss with you to find, we want to make sure that this is the right course for you. There's no point if it's not the right fit, it doesn't work for you or for us. Now, let me, yes, so exactly. Now, if you're traveling for a week, the sessions will be recorded. You'll be able to catch up, absolutely. And look, 8 weeks, you've got busy lives, I'm sure. Things will happen, right? So there might be a Monday where, you've got other commitments, you can't join a session. So absolutely, the sessions are recorded. Now, in terms of the logistics, admin, how to book, etc. I'm going to give you a link. So I'm going to post this on the social media platforms and on Zoom. And for those of you, when I post these links on some platforms, you won't see it, but I'll show you the page in a second. Let me then move to the page I've just shared with you. Where is it? There we go. And I'm going to go straight to the course content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to relatively quickly scroll through the contents of the 8 weeks, just to give you a taste of what it's like, and hopefully you will know, yes, that's the sort of level I'm at. That's what I want to achieve. For those of you who did not get the link, if you go to realpython.com/live, you then click on the intermediate deep dive, you'll get to this. So realpython.com/live, and then you'll get to this page. By the way, on this page, you'll also find all the information about dates, times, cost, how to book, all the admin stuff, etc., etc. Now, before I start going through the 8 weeks, you'll also see here that on this page, you'll find the 3 sessions in each week. And importantly, the time you'll see here is the time of the sessions in your own time zone. I'm based in the UK, which is why it's showing me my times. But this is where you can check the session times. There are 2 session times. You just need one of them. So as long as either the first or the second time works for you, then you're all fine. The sessions will be at the same time every week. So you either need group 1 or group 2. You don't need both. So that's how you can find the session times. The live sessions, I did say there's flexibility here, right? You can do the material anytime you want. The one exception, of course, is the live sessions. They happen live. So those are the fixed points in the week, either at this time or at this time. Check it yourself to find your time zone. And if one of them works, then we're all okay. Good. So content. This is an intermediate course. So intermediate, however, can mean lots of things to lots of different people. So let me give you an idea of what this course is. This is about getting into the core Python and digging underneath the surface to see what's happening. If you're doing this course, you're already comfortable with your for loops and your while loops, and you can define functions. But you're now ready to start digging under the surface, understand how everything is linked in Python, and therefore to move on to more advanced topics. So we start with an introduction to object-oriented programming. There are 2 reasons why I chose to start with OOP. Now, some of you may already be familiar with OOP, others maybe have seen it but not used it much. It doesn't matter. We're going to review many of these topics. You see that we'll start by reviewing the basics briefly, and then we'll use those basics to build onto more advanced topics. So every topic will always start with a review of things you may already know. But why do we start with object-oriented programming? 2 reasons. The first one is because OOP is an important style of coding, an important paradigm. Some people love it, some people hate it. It doesn't matter. It's there. You can't avoid it. So it's an important paradigm in programming that we need to know. But there's a second reason. And this is that Python is inherently an object-oriented language. Python is built on top of object-oriented programming principles. So if we want to understand core Python, dig underneath the surface, look behind the scenes, use whichever analogy you like, we cannot do that without a good understanding of object-oriented programming, because OOP is what Python is built on. So that's the reason why we start with OOP, because it's essential in itself as a useful topic, but as a way of understanding Python as a whole. Good. I'm not going to read through all of those topics, so you can read through it in your own time. We move on then to week two, keep talking on about object-oriented programming. We focus on the special methods. I did say everything in Python is built on top of OOP. And in fact, everything that happens in Python, pretty much, is somehow linked to one of these special methods. These are sometimes they're called dunder methods, the ones you have underscore, underscore, something, underscore, underscore. So these are essential to understand anything in Python. So we'll start exploring them. We'll also start looking at some data structures, and specifically here, data classes. And briefly we'll talk about iteration, but this is coming in week three. So week two is a bit more on OOP, and we start to sort of link everything together nicely. We move on to week three. And week three, we shift to looping. I say shift, everything is connected. But here we're going to focus on looping. But we're not going to be focusing necessarily on how to write a for loop, how to write a while loop. You know that already. Here we're going to look at the Pythonic way of looping. So we're going to, again, look at what does Python really do when we're iterating through something? And how do all of these tools allow us to loop in an efficient way in Python? So yeah, we'll talk about list comprehensions, tools like map and filter, other tools like zip, enumerate, and the iter tools module, for example, that has lots of useful tools that allow us to solve iteration problems in the Python way rather than in a manual way. And then we'll start talking about topics like iterators, iterable generators. If you've never heard of these terms, that's fine. That's what we'll be doing in week three. If you've heard of them, well, we'll be diving deeper. These are the key tools that we need to understand whenever there is iteration in Python, and beyond. Generators are used beyond iteration as well. So that's our week three. Week four, we focus on functions. Functions are, of course, an essential part of programming. You know how to define your own functions. We will review the basics of functions, but then we're going to start, again, looking at a bit further detail on what's happening inside a function. And this will be relevant for week five as well, which we'll build on. So week four, we're going to make sure we know pretty much everything that we need to know about functions, or almost everything. Some of these topics you would have come across already. Others perhaps might be new. So all the types of arguments we can have, how we can mix and match them, why functions work the way they do in Python, all the quirks that are around functions, what happens, how does information go in and out of a function, what happens when you pass an argument to a function. It's a bit different in Python to how it is in other languages, etc., etc. So by the end of week four, we'll have a really good understanding of functions inside and out. And that leads us to week five, which is related. So talking about functions, we talk about scope. So when you define a variable, where does it exist? And you would be aware that if you define a variable in a function, it only exists inside the function, but there's a lot more to that topic. So we'll explore scoping in more detail. And that leads us to some of the more intermediate advanced topics related to functions, closures, decorators. Here is where we're using functions beyond the basics. Week six, we focus on advanced data types. So in Python, what matters with data types is not what the data type is, but what it can do. This is the duck typing principle. So on week six, we're going to explore the characteristics that data types can have, and therefore we'll look at data types you know and others that you may not know. And we'll look at them in terms of what characteristics do they have in common, what characteristics do they have that are different, and how do we use that information when we're writing a project? How do I choose the right data type? What is the decision process I need? How do I decide whether I need a set or a tuple or a dictionary or some other weird data type? For example, we'll be looking at the collections module that has some interesting data types. Other specialized structures. So week six, we'll get to understand how to store any type of data in Python, well, more or less. Now, weeks 1 to 6 are the content weeks. So this is where we're going to be covering the new content, which I've just shown you. The last 2 weeks, we'll be working on a project. So the last 2 weeks will be different. The format will still be the same in the sense that we'll still be meeting 3 times a week, but instead of having daily content for you to learn, the daily content will be a task for you to do. We will all work on the same project. So rather than having individual projects, we'll all work on the same project. This means that we can keep the discussions going because we're all working on the same challenges. It doesn't mean we'll all have exactly the same code. You will customize your code, but we'll all be working on the same project. So the way a typical day will work in week 7 and 8 is we'll explain what the project is, of course, and then I've split it up into 10 units because there are 10 work days in 2 weeks. So every day has been like, let's start with this task. Here's the task for the day. You will work on it. We'll have discussions on the forum. You'll post your code. Then at the end of the day, I'll take your ideas, merge them into a version, and post my version so that every day there is as a reference point my version of the code. And then we'll move on to the second day, third day. Every day we're adding more to the project. This is key because learning stuff, learning the topics is important. But at the end of the day, knowing lots of things in isolation doesn't help you build projects. So in the final 2 weeks, we'll be able to take all the stuff we've learned and see how we can bring it together, how we can make decisions when we're designing projects. And because this project will be a bit larger, we'll be able to explore sort of what makes a project. It's not just putting lots of things together. We need to decide how to put things together. How do I decide what data types to use? How do I decide what tools to use? We'll be talking a lot about that in weeks 7, and week 8 is a continuation of the project. Good, that's our 8 weeks. We will cover a lot in 8 weeks. They are 8 busy weeks. Yes, it's 2 hours a day, but we'll be covering a lot in those 2 hours a day. Now, I'll have a look at a few more questions that may have come in. I have more or less finished telling you the stuff I wanted to say. So what I'll do is after having a look at some questions that may have come in, I'll review, sort of summarize things. But if you have questions, now is a good time to start posting them on the chats. If you're on Zoom, you're more than welcome to raise your hand, and if you prefer voice. And I'll answer any questions you might have. Questions. Can we choose the time slot for the classes? Yes. Yes, absolutely. So should you choose to join the course, when you book the course, you'll receive an email from me soon after, and I'll ask you which slot you prefer. Now, a common follow-up question, I haven't seen it yet, but I'll preempt it because someone will ask it. Is it possible to change sessions? Yes. We want this to be as flexible as possible. So although we want as much as possible the same group of students to be in the early session and then a group of students to be in the late sessions, as we've said before, stuff happens in life. The work meeting that's been put in at the last minute and you have to miss your session. If the other session works for you, you can join that session. Or if for some reason on Wednesdays you always have something at a particular time and therefore on Wednesdays you need to join the previous session, that is perfectly fine. Just let me know so that I know when to expect you. So there is that flexibility. But if possible, sort of pick one session which is going to be your main session, and then you can move on. Good. What are some sample examples of the projects done by students in the past? So the project we'll be working on here is a recipe management app. So in some ways, the project itself is not as important as how we're building the project. The design choice behind what project we do, what I want to do in these final 2 weeks is not add more new content. We will have lots of content in weeks 1 to 6. So I want a project that allows us to use the material we've already learned in weeks 1 to 6. So it will be a recipe management app, but in some ways, I always think it almost doesn't matter what the application is. What really matters is how are we going to solve those problems? Because it's the process of writing the program that matters. And then you can apply that to other applications. But that's the general idea. Sort of, you can probably guess the sort of thing it is, where we have lots of information to store, lots of manipulations of recipes we need to do. So it's about bringing all of these things together into a large-ish project. Um, how many sessions are there in a week? So yeah, I'll review. In fact, I'll go to the review. So the quick answer to the questions is live sessions. There are 3 a week. But what I'll do is let me go back to my mind map here and use this as a. I know some of you may have joined halfway through, etc., etc. So let me use this as a way of reviewing the key format of the course. By the way, this session is also being recorded. Those of you who are on Zoom, I'll send you an email because I have your emails with a link. Those of you who are watching this on some streaming platform, the recording will either be on the streaming platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, wherever you are. Or if not, just contact Real Python or contact me directly and we'll send you the link. So if you've missed part of the session, the recording is there. Just ask us and we'll send you the link if you don't have it. So, summary of the format for those who perhaps join later. It's 8 week course. It's a multimodal course. This is a previous student used this term and I quite like it in the sense that there are lots of different ways of learning. Every day of the course, there's going to be about 2 hours of content. I say about 2 hours. Some days are shorter, some days are longer. Some of you read faster, some of you need so it's roughly 2 hours. And every day I've curated content for you. You'll be going through that material in your own time. However, 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we'll be meeting live. Two of them are Q&A sessions, and the Wednesday one is a more structured session where I pick a topic to discuss live. So there are 3 live sessions a week, but there's plenty more material happening throughout the week, and a lot of that happens in the forum. So the forum is ongoing throughout the whole 8 weeks. So the discussion never ends, as it were. It's continuously ongoing. And groups are small. As I've mentioned, there are 2 groups running at the same time, the 2 different times I've shown you earlier. Each one of those groups would be 10 students. This means that when we have our live sessions, we can have conversations in smallish groups. Hopefully there will be no barriers to people asking questions and sharing whatever they want to share. Hopefully I haven't missed any questions, but if you do have questions, please do send them in. A reminder, I've mentioned this before, we're streaming this on several platforms. On some of them, if you write below the video, it doesn't come to me. So if you've written a question and I haven't answered it, it's because it hasn't come to me, unfortunately. Technology, great when it works, sometimes it doesn't work the way you want it. But you can always find me. If you find me on social media, contact me. If not, send it to Real Python and it will come to me. So any questions, please, please, please do get in contact with me. And if you're still not sure whether the level or the format is right for you, again, get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer any more specific questions you might have for your particular needs. Question, is the recipe management app web-based? No. And the reason is that the focus of this course is on the core Python topics, the ones I was sort of scanning through earlier. What we want to do in the project is not to introduce any new topics. So since we're not working on web frameworks in the first 6 weeks, in the project, I don't want to introduce something new, so that if someone hasn't used web frameworks before, that will be something new to learn. What I want to do in the project is to consolidate the topics we have and to focus on the how do we design a project. So that's the reason why it's not web-based. It's simply because web platforms aren't a topic we've covered in the course. So the project will almost entirely use topics we've used in weeks 1 to 6. Good. I'll pause a bit in case there are more questions. While I wait for any more questions, if you have any, maybe I've answered all of your questions already. Let me go back to my, they're not slides really, they're the splash screen. I've shared the page. In fact, let me share it again on those of you on Zoom and those of you on some of the platforms. So the page I was showing you is the one I've just shared. If you haven't seen the link pop up in front of you, then the best way to get there is realpython.com/live. And then there you'll find two links. One of them is for the intermediate deep dive. And there you'll find all the information I've shared with you today, the course content, dates, cost, how to book, everything you need to know about the course is also there. So hopefully I've given you an introduction of what to expect. You know who I am because I'll be the one teaching the course, but you can also go to that page to sort of go through the details again. As I've mentioned, any questions do come back to me. I'm happy to answer any more questions. I'll have a quick look at my notes. I think I have covered everything I wanted to cover. One thing I should also mention, I may have mentioned it, I can't remember. All the content will be, I did mention that the sessions are recorded, but you will have access to all the course content, not just for the 8 weeks of the course, but for as long as you need it afterwards. So all the daily material you'll be doing, you will have access to that after the course as well. All the session recordings, you'll have access to the recordings after the course as well. Even the forum content, at the end of the course, we will freeze the forum, export it, and you have a copy of the forum. So all the discussions we have in the forum, you'll also have access to them. So although the best way to get the most out of this course is to follow it day by day live, the content is also there for you to review later on. So you will have all the content for forever. And that, I think, brings me to everything I wanted to cover. What I'll do is I'll finish off now, but then I'll stay on in the background for a minute or so in case someone has a last minute question. I'll keep an eye on that. But I'll use this sort of final minute then to thank you all for joining the session. Those of you on Zoom, I'll send you an email with the link. Those of you elsewhere, if you need this recording, you'll find it on the platform or just contact Real Python and we'll send it to you. Thank you for joining. Hopefully I'll see some of you when the course starts. I did not mention the start date, did I? No, I did not. So let me go back. It's the 2nd of February. So the next course starts on the 2nd of February. So there's still a few weeks left. We do have limited numbers, so bear that in mind, but there are a few weeks left for the course. Hopefully I'll see some of you on February the 2nd, and we'll spend 8 lovely weeks together talking about Python. Thank you all. I'll stay in the background for a minute or so in case. Oh, there is one question. So those who need to leave, of course, please do so. Oh, a hand has gone up or down. Maybe it wasn't a raised hand. Adwok, maybe you were just waving. That's fine. If you want to jump in and ask questions, you're more than welcome to. But I saw the hand go down straight away, so maybe it was a mishit. I'll stay in the background for a bit. Thank you for joining. Hope to see you soon. And if you have any questions, do let me know. Bye bye.